Hey everyone, and welcome. Today you're going to learn all 9 of the cheesiest routes you can use on the current Worlds patch 9.19. No, we're not talking about cheddar, mozzarella, or Gouda. We're talking about a different kind of cheese. A strategy that is unconventional, designed to take the opponent by surprise, but also super powerful. Trust me, whether you're a jungler or a laner, you need to watch this guide until the end. Although cheese strategies can be powerful, their greatest weakness is in scouting them early on. In this guide, not only will you learn how to execute these strategies to gain that sweet LP, but also how to counter them to prevent you from being robbed blind of elo before the season ends. So let's jump straight into it with our first cheese strategy starring every AD carry's favorite jungler, Rengar. Rengar alone is enough to strike fear into the most battle-hardened summoners, which makes sense considering he actually has one of the strongest, most consistent cheeses in the game. It pretty much guarantees first blood. And as with all the strategies you're going to learn, it's really easy to execute. You first start at your red. While doing so, you check the side lanes to identify where the enemy jungler is starting. In this case, Pantheon shows top early, indicating that the enemy Zac is getting a leash on his blue. When the enemy starts at their blue buff, it gives us the green light to execute this strategy. After killing red, immediately move to invade the enemy's jungle to steal their red buff while waiting for them to show up. Now, because of Rengar's leap mechanic from brushes, combined with how the brushes are set up on the red side of the jungle, it's impossible for the enemy to escape. You leap onto the enemy and follow their flash with your own. Keep in mind, this is against Zac jungle, probably the worst champion to use this first blood strategy against because of his passive, and we chose this replay on purpose. It's really just unstoppable. Now, this may have looked simple, and it is, but there are a few tricks to it. First, try to get a ward on the brush next to the enemy's raptors or around the raptor camp in general. This way, you can spot when the enemy is heading to the red. Second, when you start the game, use the blast cone trick with Rengar. For those who don't know, Rengar gains ferocity stacks, which empowers his abilities. By leaping out of this brush with your Q activated onto this blast cone plant, you can gain 2 free ferocity stacks, which will help your clear speed. Next, as you're invading the enemy's red, make sure to use the blast cone plant along the way to again increase your speed. Besides that, have fun destroying the enemy jungler before the game even begins. Alright, so how do you deal with the strategy? Well, there's really only one true way to prevent this, and it's to start at your red when facing a Rengar. By starting at your red, you'll take it immediately and begin pathing towards your blue side jungle where the brush patterns don't allow Rengar the constant leaping needed to kill you. Every time I see a jungler start blue against a Rengar, I wince in pain. The poor fellow just doesn't know what's about to happen to him. After the first strategy, some of you laners are probably breathing a sigh of relief. That was a mistake. In fact, if any of you play mid lane, you may want to look away as things are going to get ugly. For our second strategy, we're going to be covering a special kind of transition gank. Transition ganks are simply when instead of walking to one side of your jungle to the other, you take a detour through mid to apply a gank in the process. They're super time efficient and the bane of all mid laners' existence. This transition gank is different though. It's when you start at your red, then immediately head mid to gank, while they're level 1 and you're level 2 with red buff. This often results in a kill, but always guarantees their flash. This strategy is used on champions who have very strong level 2 ganks, typically a form of both mobility and crowd control. It's most popular on Jarvan due to his EQ combo, but also can be executed on other strong level 2 champions such as Zhao, Camille, Pantheon, and Lee Sin. However, there's one champion that remains the absolute king of this cheese gank, and that's Twitch jungle. In fact, anytime you see a Twitch jungle, there's a 99.9% chance, repeating of course, that he's going to execute this cheese route. You see, to counter this early transition gank, all you need is a ward in this area at the ramp on the side that their red is on. That will spot the gank and prevent your mid from dying to it or needing to flash. This doesn't work for Twitch though. In fact, nothing does. Let me explain. Twitch starts the route at his red as normal. However, we then see an immediate variation. Instead of coming from the side like a normal jungler, he comes from the lane itself, preventing any ward from spotting him. Twitch then goes invisible, appears behind the enemy mid, and either kills them, forces their flash, or both. The only way to counter this is for your mid laner to play extremely defensive during a key timing. This gank should hit from 155 to 205 in game. During this time, your mid needs to basically sit near his tower and let the wave push to him. So far, in both of these replays, we only got the opponent's flash, and so it may not seem so bad. The real problem though isn't in the first gank, but how it sets up follow-up ganks. Twitch can farm a few camps, then as soon as you're back up the lane trying to farm without your flash, he'll gank you again, picking up an easy kill off the repeat gank. It won't end there either. Now that your flash is on cooldown, you'll just get spam ganked every time you're pushed up. Great, so be on the lookout for level 2 junglers like Jarvan, Xin Zhao and such. and if the enemy plays Twitch jungle, hope your mid laner has watched this video. You're probably thinking, at least only a handful of champions can use this strategy. Well, that's where you're wrong. Our next cheese route expands on this early transition gank and adapts it to a variety of powerful level 3 junglers. In fact, this one is starting to gain a ton of popularity in high levels of play, so listen up. You start red, then do your Krugs, into Raptors. Since Krugs and Raptors give so much experience, you'll hit level 3 off of 3 camps instead of the usual 4. Now, since you're level 3 with red buff, instead of transitioning to the other side of your jungle as normal, you look to execute a transition gank mid. This catches a lot of mid laners off guard, as the timing is so late given that you started on that side of the map. Again, you may be thinking, okay, well you only got some damage on Orianna and her flash. The true power is not in the first gank, but how it sets up a repeat gank on the enemy mid laner that doesn't have flash. There is one thing though that I would recommend doing if you're planning on using this, and it's to use the ward trick. Place an early trinket ward at around 50 seconds, then recall and swap to a sweeping lens and head to your red buff as normal. This will make it so that your sweeping lens will be up by the time you look to gank mid, letting you know if you're spotted in any early wards. Again, in order to counter this, you have to spot it out. Keep in mind that the level 2 transition gank will hit around 155 in game. The level 3 transition ganks hits later on at around 240. Now, your trinket ward at level 1 will last 90 seconds, which works out great. Place your trinket ward at the end of the ramp at 130 on the side of the enemy's red buff as the laning phase starts, and you will get coverage of this area until the 3-minute mark. This will spot both the level 2 transition gank and the level 3 transition gank. Alright, enough of the transition ganks, let's move on to our next strategy. This one goes out to anyone who's a fan of Metal Gear Solid, Splinter Cell, or Assassin's Creed. You first need to play a jungler that can jump walls at level 2 like Graves, Kindred, and Italy. You start at your red and check the side lanes to identify where the enemy jungler started. In this case, bot lane shows early, while top lane is missing, indicating that the enemy Rengar is getting a leash at his red. What we then do is jump the nearby wall and hit to steal the enemy's blue. Now, it's important that after you jump the wall, you move to the side as you exit the pit. This is to avoid being spotted in a common ward that will be placed in the pixel brush. After you take the blue, you want to immediately head to the enemy's wolves. A good portion of the time they will be there, and you'll be able to kill them, get their flash, or steal the camp. In this case, Rengar is there, so we push him off the camp. We then make sure to leave, since the enemy laners could collapse on us, but we place a ward on the enemy's wolves before we do so we can get deep vision and scout the enemy's future path. As always, when you steal an enemy's buff, you need to be aware that they will try to steal your own buff to equalize the position. So in this case, Rengar could head to our blue side to counter jungle. This is why you typically want to path towards that side of the map to get it locked down and secure in order to keep your farm lead that you acquired by stealing the enemy's jungle. Overall, it's not the most punishing cheese, but it's a very consistent way of getting an early lead and throwing the enemy off their game. Now, in terms of countering it, your best bet is to get you or your teammates to place a ward on your blue buff. You see, if you place a ward in the pixel brush, then they can jump the wall. If you place a ward in the middle of the river to catch them jumping over the wall, well, then they could just not jump the wall and go through the pixel brush. The only way to guarantee you know whether the enemy is using this cheese is to place a ward directly on your blue. If you do spot the enemy on your blue, then you have two choices. You either have to immediately collapse on him, pinging for your teammates to help, or immediately invade his blue to steal it and equalize the position. Both are perfectly viable, it's just situational and what you think is best. Speaking of stealing the enemy's buffs, this next G strategy is one of the absolute favorites of low elo players and is surprisingly effective. It's really straightforward. You simply invade the enemy's red buff before the minions spawn, and if no one spot you, then you start at the enemy's red buff instead of your own. Now, even though I said it's really simple, it's also one that I see players immediately mess up once they steal the buff. So put yourself in Xin Zhao's position. You invaded the enemy's jungle and started at his red. What do you think he should do next? Remember, when you steal an enemy's buff, their immediate response will be to steal your own to equalize the position. So you want to protect your own buff to prevent this, and how do we do this? By using one of the strategies you learned earlier, a level 2 transition gank. We get Talon's flash, and are now in a position to defend our red from the enemy's Vi who's trying to steal it. This leads into Vi having to use her own flash to escape, into securing our own red, then taking the nearby scuttle. And what do we do after? The same concept you learned earlier. We got Talon's flash from our first transition gank, so we look to land a repeat gank on him. He doesn't fall for it, but this is the beauty of the transition gank. We wanted to get to the top side of the map anyways to take the scuttle there. Starting at the enemy's buff can be an effective cheese strategy, but remember, you have to defend your own buff or else you lose your advantage and the position becomes equal again. Number 7 of our cheese strategies is unique in that it can look far more effective than it really is, which fools a lot of players into using it more than they probably should. You start red, then immediately level 2 gank the nearby side lane. This often catches the enemy off guard, securing you a free kill. You then follow this up by immediately invading the enemy's blue. Although this looks like it has potential to be super punishing since you're getting both first blood and stealing the enemy's blue, it can be countered quite effectively. You see, when you gank top, you reveal yourself on the minimap to the enemy jungler. All they have to do is invade your blue as a response, and suddenly when you invade the enemy's jungle, all you're doing is equalizing the position, you're not actually getting a farm lead on them. When both junglers invade each other's buffs on the opposite side of the map, it's called vertical jungling. This is because the junglers are farming vertically from top to bottom instead of the usual horizontal jungling from left to right. Now, vertical jungling can be beneficial, as you can use it to isolate an important matchup on your side of the map, while giving the enemy jungler a less important one on the opposite side. So this strategy can start to look very effective. You get a gank on the side lane into then initiating vertical jungling. Here's the problem, the enemy jungler doesn't have to enter into vertical jungling if he doesn't want to. When he first sees you gank top, he can choose to respond by heading to his own blue to defend it. This can put you in an awkward position where a fight can break out over this buff, which is often determined by which laners react first. Essentially, the outcome can be hard to predict and it can be quite random. For example, in this position, Zhao starts red. He executes the cheese strategy and ganks top, getting first blood. He then invades the enemy blue, but ends up running into Volibear, who's defending it. Although his Nocturne can collapse topside to help him attack the blue, the enemy Heimerdinger has respawned and can move to help defend as well. On top of this, if we look mid, we can see how we lack lane priority and our Xerath is even low on health, not exactly a great position. Even though this strategy has a strong opener, where you get first blood, it has an awkward follow-up that usually just results in vertical jungling, or you having to spend a ton of time heading to your blue. And finally, our last cheese route is one that has emerged as a hard counter to the very popular CRunk strategy. For those living under a rock, the CRunk strategy is where you take your red, Krugs, and Raptors. It's popular because your red side jungle gives far more gold and experience than your blue side jungle. We actually created an entire guide detailing this new counter to it titled How Fnatic Broxah Counters the CRunk strategy. That being said, it would be a crime not to include it in this guide as it's just so damn effective. So we're starting at our red, and we spot the enemy Kayn starting at his Raptors from a ward. When an enemy starts at their Raptors, it's referred to as a leashless opener, and guarantees that they will execute the CRunk strategy by killing their Raptors, red, Krugs, then recall, and head to their blue. To counter it, all we have to do is immediately invade the enemy's jungle and steal their blue, wolves, making sure to leave a small one alive to delay the respawn, and their Gromp. The one weakness of the CRunk strategy is how much time you're spending in your red side jungle, which is what we take advantage of by invading the enemy's blue side jungle so fast. After this, you will often have a gank opportunity on the overextended top lane before the nearby scuttle spawns. You then take the scuttle, and now your priority is to transition gank mid to defend your blue side jungle so that the enemy jungler can't invade it and equalize the position. Alright, that was a lot, but you now know all 9 of the most powerful and most common cheese strategies on the current patch. Tell us, which one do you think is the strongest? Let us know in the comment section below, as well as any questions you might have. As always, good luck and have fun on Summoner's Rift.